Hi, I'm Nancy, and today we're going to talk about planning for a vacation or a trip. So, I like to start off with when to plan. Eric and I usually come back from a trip and are super excited about our travels. But 4 or 5 months later, we're already talking about our next excursion and where we're going to go. I strongly believe in early planning just so we get everything that we want to get and get what we want to do. We can do a lot of research in that time frame. So there is a lot involved when you're planning for a vacation. Are you going round trip? Are you going to fly into one area, fly out of the other? It depends on what you're doing. Typically, we have always done a round trip flight. We learned on our last vacation that that is not always doable and it's not always economical. It is cheaper when you do like a in and out of the same area. You can do a round trip flight, but it's not always doable. In fact, our next trip, we're actually flying into, we're splitting our trip up, going to Europe. We're actually flying, we live on the West Coast, so we're flying to the East Coast, taking a few days in over on the East Coast, and then we're flying over to our first stop. But we are traveling three different countries, and instead of going back to that original country, we are flying home from the third country. So that's where the research comes in. You really want to look at, how far apart are these countries. Yes, it's Europe, so a lot of them are tightly bound together, and you can make it back on a 2 3 hour train ride and then fly out of the same city you arrived in. So keep that in mind when you are planning. When we plan, there are three components that we look at, and we stagger them through the planning process. The first one is we look at flights, and flights are there's a lot involved with it. So I like to go to Google Flights or Kayak. Those are my two search engines. Um, I like Google Flights because you can enter Explore, and you can put in the date you want, and it gives you a map of the world, and it tells you what the flight is going to be round trip with the number of people you are going with. I love that feature. So sometimes, like last year, we went to Barcelona and we were able to find a really good flight, but yet we went to Barcelona and then we took a cruise around the Mediterranean areas. So, but we flew into Barcelona because they had a really good flight. I've always wanted to see Barcelona. Barcelona, FYI, it's one of my very, very favorite places on earth. Um, so that worked out for us. Um, you can also, I usually have some people call your sidekick your sous chef. I have my sous um, travel planner, travel agent with me all the time. And I'm always constantly, he's usually sitting right next to me. I'm like, okay, if we flew here, how many miles by train? How long would it take to get here? So he's doing some of the research with me, and then we can carefully make a decision together. The next thing we look at are accommodations. There are so many ways to travel nowadays, and depending on what you want to do, would be your focal point for your accommodations. Hotels are great, and it depends on where you're going. When we went to New Orleans, we did a hotel. We wanted to be right on the strip, so that was feasible. But a lot of times we do Airbnb. I love Airbnb because you can really look at the reviews, you can ask a lot of questions. This is where you get your information about accessibility. I am mobile, but I have limited mobility. So that opens up doors for me as far as if there's a few steps, I can handle it. If there's a couple flights, I stay away from those Airbnb units. This is also a time where you can also look at for hotels if breakfast is included. When we went to Paris, we did an Airbnb, And so the breakfast was included. It was presented beautifully. When we go to Europe, I love to find hotels with breakfast included. And this is why it's not like an American breakfast where you walk up and there's canisters of cereals and waffles. It's a really high protein breakfast they offer. Europeans tend to have a lot of meats, cheeses, and fruit on display as their breakfast. They will have a croissant that you can, with peanut butter sitting right next to it. So it's a way of eating very healthy on your vacation, getting those proteins in so you can go explore throughout your day. And the breakfast definitely sits for a longer period of time versus a bowl of cereal. Um, that brings us to our third component for planning. I think I've covered everything with hotels and flights. Our third one is, and it's our favorite. Once we have the flights, we're committed. Once we have the accommodations, we're excited. But the excursions put us over the edge, and those are our conversations that we have together before the trip. I'm not going to list the excursions that we have gone on. I'd rather talk about those on the links that bring you to the actual city or country or state that we went to. But trust me, we have had a lot of fun on our vacations due to the planning of the excursions. I want to emphasize first and foremost, do not load your vacation up with excursions. You want time to explore. You want time to go down to a cafe and have a cup of coffee and people watch. You want to walk around and cross a bridge and just take photos and stuff. Enjoy your day. Take in the experience. Excursions are fun, but you have to also remember you're going to be surrounded by usually Americans. And so it kind of takes away from the whole point of being there, and that's to immerse yourself in the culture. And so your conversations are going to be with people who speak English versus someone who speaks French, and having those dialogues that you've practiced that French for months and months. You want to use that French language to immerse yourself. So keep it very limited. One company that we go through, and it's very trusted, and I love this company, is Viator. I usually do a little research with Travel Advisor and see where people are going and what people are talking about, and I get kind of an idea through TripAdvisor, but I do all my planning through Viator. And I do this for two reasons. First of all, they have beautiful descriptions of their excursions. And again, with limited mobility, I have to know, can I handle these excursions? There was a time that we went to Jamaica and my husband and I went snorkeling and I could not get back in the boat. Cool story today. Please read it in my blog. But at the time it was a nightmare. So keep those in mind. You can ask about steps. If it's when we went to Athens, we found out there were a lot of cobblestones, and I had my scooter with me at the time. And so we had a plan for that excursion. We also learned, though, that going up to Acropolis, there was a brand new elevator. So I was super stoked about that. So just do your research. They're very helpful. If you message the company, someone from the company will get back to you, and they're going to be very honest with, if you ask how many steps, they're going to tell you there's 3 flights versus 5 steps or 17 steps. They're going to tell you about getting in the van. Is their van accessible? You got to remember that. They've got other customers. If you're bringing a wheelchair or scooter, is that going to be feasible for that day? If you don't need your wheelchair or scooter, a lot of times I don't bring mine. If it's just we're being dropped off and I go inside, I don't need it. But if we're going to be, like when we went to Acropolis, I actually brought it because I wanted to see the columns and I wanted to see all of the buildings around the entire area. So those are my 3 tips for planning. And if you plan carefully, you're going to have the trip of a lifetime. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in my contacts. Have a great day.